Hi guys, and welcome to another episode. I've got Jay and Jeremy with me. How are you guys?
Not bad. Yourself?
That's good. Tonight we are talking paratech. So, for all you ghost hunters out there, we're going to talk about some of the old goodies that you like to use, and we have a special guest that will be coming on in a couple of minutes who is going to talk about some of the stuff that he comes up with, and you will be able to purchase it all, and it's stuff you have never seen before, and it's some really interesting stuff. So, yeah, do you want to jump straight into it and get into it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to bring in Daniel. How are you, Daniel?
Very good, thanks, guys. How are you?
We're pretty good.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
No, very welcome. You're in the envious position of being able to create your own tech and test it at one of the best locations in Australia.
Well, it wasn't always that way.
So, do you want to tell us how it came about?
Yeah. It's it started a few years back. My close friend and I went on a ghost tour, and it was actually up at Arradale Asylum, and we really enjoyed the experience. But once that, a big group of people kind of disrupted the energy, so you'd start to like get an interaction or something going on, and then you'd get like a few people coming in the room and in your space, and everything would just stop. I almost felt like it was a room full of bubbles, and if the bubbles is the sort of energy of the spirits or whatever we want to refer to them as, every time somebody walks through, it just bursts a load of those bubbles, and then you end up with just like bits of sticky residue on the floor. And so we decided that we would start doing our own thing, and then we would also start filming it and being able to then share it and just enjoy it as a bit of a fun time. And so that's how Ghost Series came about. And when we established Ghost Series, we, like most other teams, wanted to get our own equipment. So I think like one of the first things I got was like a spirit box, like the PSB7. Got like a REM pod from Spirit Tech, and just collecting a few bits and pieces. And then when I wanted to step it up a bit, I was pretty curious about the Ovilus from Digital Dowsing, and so I purchased an Ovilus for a lot of money and waited ages for it, and then got it and was, like, oh, it's okay. But I wasn't in love with it. And I've got quite a mechanical background, so I thought, I wonder if I can make this stuff. So I started to just kind of prototype with the typical, what most builders out there are doing, is like the kind of Radio Shack style component circuit building. And the first thing I did was build a simple REM pod. And I was using just like project boxes from JCar. And I was trying to build other devices, like just trying to come up with other stuff, simple circuits that I could make. And I kept going down to JCar, and the guy down there was like, why do you keep buying all these project boxes? And I said, oh, I'm trying to build this equipment. He's like, oh, have you ever thought about 3D printing? And I was like, no. I've heard horror stories, definitely not. So the next week I bought a 3D printer. And I bought it home, and I watched a few videos and got about as far as being able to level the bed. Set my first print off, came out perfect. I was like, oh, this isn't too hard. Kept going, and it was right at the start of COVID. And I started making these ear saver things for the face masks. And they got really popular. I sold a lot of them, and I got really, really good at printing them things. And so I bought a better printer, and then it didn't work. Oh. And I couldn't print for ages, but by which point I was committed. And so I think a lot of people that get into 3D printing kind of start and then quickly stop when they realize how frustrating and hair-pulling it is. But yes, I was already in it, so I kept going with it. And so I thought, well, I could have some fun. If I build my own devices, then I don't have to spend all this money on the ones from, getting mostly from America, or I think the UK they come out of as well. And it'll have my own sort of personal touch to it. So I started building, trying to build a REM pod, and I just grabbed a couple of samples from back in the day, and this was, I think, one of the first REM pods that I tried to design and build, and it cracks me up because like the walls are so thin that a strong gust of wind would break it, and doing things like punching a hole in the model to put the parts in, actually do that in the design tool. So I had to get a drill and drill it in, and when I actually finally printed it, I realized I couldn't even get my hand in it to build the thing anyway. So, you know, that was a lot of rubbish. So we kind of went from one extreme to the other and ended up making almost a hat. So I didn't really know what I was doing, and eventually started to make some progress, and then getting to take these devices out. And one of them I made was, we're familiar with the sort of coffin-shaped music box.
Yep.
I wanted one of those, so probably one of the first cool devices I built was one of those. And I took it to a location we were filming at the time, and the guy that was filming for us said, "Oh, that's really cool, but it's a shame that you can't change the music to suit the history of the location." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good point." So I went home and thought about it, and over the next few weeks, lots of messing around, I came up with a digital version of a music box. So you could program the SD card to play whatever you wanted it to play. And so a few people that I was getting to know in the paranormal field were like, "That's really cool. Can you build me one?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, if you want." So I started building a few bits and selling to people I knew, and then like, you should actually start selling these, like advertising them and selling them. And I was like, I don't know, because I'd had a pretty bad experience where I'd printed some K2 meter stands, and the feedback I got from people was just like, you can't charge, $15 for one of those, and blah blah blah. And I was just like, I don't need that kind of trouble and frustration. So I was quite reluctant, but they pushed me into it, and I was like, okay, look, we'll see how it goes. So I started producing devices to sell, and I guess what happened was, making more of the devices, each one I made, I started to see a better way to do it. So evolution began. I got better at my 3D printing designs, better at the print quality, refining my circuits, making things work better, more sensitive, more stable, whatever it was, and just kind of, as a problem would come up, it was one problem to solve at a time, and so then that would become the next version, and more people were buying the stuff, and the people that had been buying stuff from me loved it so much, loved what I was doing. They would buy the newest version from me, which was so helpful, because then I would spend that money on more equipment, and like as in more workshop equipment, more printers, more tools, more parts. The more parts I have, the more I can prototype. And eventually, Aradale Asylum in Ararat had caught wind of what I was doing, and they were really interested in my devices, and they invited me to go up and show them some of my devices. So I kind of became, I don't know, like a unofficial resident. I was spending a lot of time up there showing them what I've come up with, and they were using it, and then they were buying it, and ultimately that led to me starting to do tours up there. I'd gotten quite familiar with the place. They liked the way that I did things, and so I took on doing the 6-hour tour every so often, and so that became a really good opportunity to be testing my devices actually on a really good location, and it got to a point where I was selling a lot more than I'd expected, especially the music box. That was probably my biggest device at the time. And so I really wanted to keep Ghost Series about the investigations, about being on the location, the history, the experiences. And so I thought to kind of separate the device away from Ghost Series a bit, in the kind of marketing sense, or online presence. You've got the brand Phantom Phase that came about, and then the brand Ghost Series, which is my team. I just, the split, it just seemed like a good idea. It allowed me, two separate spaces. So Phantom Phase kind of is where I just concentrate on devices, whereas Go Series, I guess, is where I come up with the ideas, but also get to just use the equipment and not worry about all the work that went in. And it was quite a funny transition because I think we were up at Kilmore. There's an old jail at Kilmore at the time. We had somebody else with us, and I'd built this device that was like an EMF detector, and it kind of had segments in the top that lit up. And he'd really enjoyed watching it work the night before, and he said, "Oh, it's really cool, but you should call it something like the Phantom Phase." And it just stuck in my head. I was like, "That is just brilliant! It's such a good name." So I kind of pinched that from him. Thanks for that. And he helped me come up with the logo, which started off as a bit of a joke. The what you see as the glasses was two peas. If you cut them in half, you got the two peas, and it was like you put them together to make them look like my glasses. And then I said, I just need to put a beanie on it, and it'll look like me. This whole evolution of sort of Phantom Phase about, and so I used that as an opportunity to draw on all of the knowledge of kind of the year or so I'd been building devices through Go Series, and reset at that point and redesigned everything and made my devices, like the body stronger and the devices a bit more slick. And I took on, just a new way of putting things together and relaunched as just Phantom Phase. And that was going well. So that was like early last year. I think that started. And then I got talking to somebody that builds tech I think he's in Canada, actually. I wouldn't say the States, he's in Canada. And he knows his sort of Radio Shack style circuits inside out. And when we got chatting, he was really happy to share his ideas with me and develop what I was doing. He liked what I was doing, and he's like, I'll teach you more about how to build these circuits and things. And so I started learning a bit more about like sort of specific component function and how to better use them, and also to make your devices safer so they don't like blow up in your hand or something, like little things that are big things. And then he asked me a question. He's like, what is the ultimate device? What do you want to build? And I was like, I really want to be able to build a Novelist. Like, it's just something I'd bought that one and I was never fully in love with it. And I think if I got to build my own, I could not have to Google the words that come out of it, because I'll have wrote the dictionary myself, and they'll be specific to locations that I've done and places I go to and what I think is relevant. And so we got to work on building a Novelist, and he tried to help me with the coding, and we got started, and then realized that actually it was a bit outside of his understanding. So he tried to get somebody else to help. And like he actually commissioned somebody to help write the code. It was a third party person, and they couldn't get it to work. And while we were sort of trying to figure it out, I was spending a lot of time on the computer here with him, actually reading through the code, and it started to make sense to me. And I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't, it's not too alien, because it's quite intimidating when you first look at it. So
we like aliens.
Well, I mean, imagine trying to speak an alien language that you've never heard before or don't have a dictionary for or anything like that. Like it felt like that. And there's a few things that happened during this coding sort of stage when I decided to try and take it on myself. I overcame a couple of things that we weren't able to do, and it motivated me so much to be able to, I don't know, I kind of took on the look like the possibilities are endless. So I stuck at it, and from probably about the middle of last year when I first started, I mean, I spend so long each week. I do at least full-time hours in development of all my devices. And it just started to work. And by the end of last year, I finally did the Horus, and I did it on my own. And I couldn't ask like in forums or anything, because to do that, you've got to actually upload your code. And for obvious reasons, I didn't want to upload what I was doing. So it was really difficult to problem solve. But I got it working, and I ultimately came up with the first kind of my equivalent of the Ovilus was the Horus, and I used the sort of design of the Ovilus 3 because that's what I'd always wanted to have, and I even used the same screen that they used, the old Nokia screens from the 2000s model mobile phone. Awful screen. It looks good, but it's a pain to have them working properly. They're a nightmare of a screen. And yeah, had like a basic working Horus, and I did something a bit different just to separate it a bit. I added like a proximity sensor in the top, so it's like the sort of shadow sensor in the top of it, and I was absolutely wrapped with it. And along with that one, up at Aradale, they use the Ghost Meter Pros a lot, and they're kind of a obsolete device now and really hard to get. And a lot of them are getting broken that they've got and replace them. So they knew what I was doing with my coding, and they're like, can you come up with a replacement for the Ghost Meter Pro? So I started working on that and went a long way from the name and came up with the Phantom Meter, Ghost Meter, Phantom Meter, you know, like just... and it's basically, you know, a yes-no device that's triggered by EMF. And it was pretty close.
Does the white bit on the top light up?
Yes.
Yep.
So like the Ghost Meter, the top will light up. Now, anybody that's used the Ghost Meter will be aware that they're a bit of a pain. When they say yes, it's like one flash, and when they say no, it's like a double flash, and until you actually see it, it can be a bit difficult. So mine is nice and simple, that it'll say yes on the screen and the green will come on, or a no on the screen and the red will come on. So it's a bit more obvious. They look pretty cool in the corner, like just glowing away. And you know, so I'd come a long way from sort of these simple Radio Shack circuits into actually pushing into doing coding. But probably after Christmas and like the very start of the year, I'd had a lot more ideas of what I could potentially do. I guess just from getting experience in code writing. And so I got better at doing it, because every time I got stuck on trying to figure something out, I would learn like 5 other things before one of them would actually fix what the problem was. So then those things that I'd learned, I would use somewhere else. And I came up with this idea for a device that I think will probably stand out a little bit like my music box did. And that device was the planchette, which I only just recently released.
Yes, I like the look of that.
It is very cool. Now, the planchette is a digital Ouija board, and a lot of people have sort of given some comments and feedback saying that Ouija boards are dangerous, you shouldn't play with them. Well, the fact of the matter is, all of that consideration went into building that. All my devices have always been for me to use at Go Series, and it was that other people started asking for them. That's why I started building them. So I don't like Ouija boards. Not something I would use. Just my choice. I don't know how to use one, so I don't try to use one.
It's the same boat here, mate.
Right.
Yep.
So
Great.
clear it up that this, even though it's a planchette, there is no board except the circuit one, right? There's no board, okay? And also, it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but my belief system around the Ouija board and the research that I've done into it is that we as people manipulate the planchette, but maybe not intentionally, and that something's manipulating us to manipulate the planchette. And I kind of feel that perhaps if that's not closed down properly, then whatever was manipulating you kind of hangs around and keeps manipulating you.
Yes,
Not really
that's...
sure, but that is, we are triggered to manipulate a planchette.
Yeah.
This device, we are responsible for moving it, but there is a geomagnetic sensor in there that is measuring the geomagnetic energy around it, and as you move it through the energy, it interprets the different sample layers and then triggers pretty much the same as an Ovilus or a Horus does, in that once it's triggered, it will then select a word from the library, or a letter, sorry, from the library, and it'll present the letter or a word off the board like hello, goodbye, yes, no, whatever else is on there. I can't remember. I don't do a Ouija board. Everything that's on a Ouija board comes up in here. So with that, there is no opening prayer unless you want to. And when you're finished with it, you just switch it off. And if you're still not convinced, take the batteries out of it, and it's done. So it's themed on an Ouija planchette because you operate it. And I kind of did it that way because I thought it would be fun to have something to be interactive with. So however you decide to use it or interpret the responses you get is entirely up to you. But that is how the device functions. And it's, I guess, I don't know, like the idea for it came about, I knew somebody that was potentially going to open an escape room. And I guess getting people to build stuff for an escape room is would be quite hard to find. Somebody that could build random stuff like I do. So they rang me up and they're like, I want to do this escape room. Have you got any ideas? And I was like, well, what's the theme? And they're like, oh, like kind of haunted asylum, like Aradale kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, okay. What about like an Ouija board that you paint some glow paint onto some of the letters, and then you could have a planchette that when you touch it, it lights up UV lights underneath, and as you look through the hole, you'll be able to see which letters or numbers are glowing and you interpret them somehow. And I actually ended up building that, and here it is, a little cute planchette thing, and it's basically a little REM pod. So you have to be touching it for the little lights to come on underneath. And the escape room never went ahead, but I'd already built it, and I thought it looked really cool, and so I just kind of left it on my desk. And I kept looking at it when I sat here writing code, and looking in the middle thinking, wouldn't it be cool if there was like a screen in there and you could see, like, I was like, it'd be pretty good to be able to look through it. So, I mean, ultimately, that's what I ended up with. So that's quite a unique device. It's basically, I stopped thinking, what am I capable of at the start of the year? What am I capable of? And started thinking, what do I want? And then working backwards from there. And one, I guess, off the back of some experiences last year, there's a lot of, surprisingly, the paranormal community, I always expected it to be exactly like, we're all here to capture stuff, and I think sharing evidence and things is brilliant. And I learned very much the hard way that wasn't the case. And there was a particular builder whose name I won't mention because it's not worth me mentioning. I'm not here to start any trouble. I really avoid it at all costs. But I built a certain device, and this said person interpreted that device as a copy of their device, and that they owned some of the rights to it, which just wasn't true. And in summary, they said, be more original, come up with something that no one else has done. And I was looking through the rest of their devices and thinking, well, you didn't come up with that. You didn't come up with that. So that kind of left it open and okay for me to be inspired by or do my own version of certain things. But it really challenged me. I'm like, okay, then, all right, let's see what we can do. And voila, we have the planchette, okay? And believe me when I say some of the stuff I've got in the works has not been done before. I have got
don't give too much away. Don't give too much away.
I'm just trying to get through one at a time, but I've got prototype parts that I've tested as a basic circuit to make sure that it works. And some of these ideas, they are working. I just haven't had time to fully write the thing and design it and build it and prototype it, test it. But there is some stuff coming that I think is very cool and hasn't been used yet. Now, the reason I'm not going to mention what some of them are is because I'm already missing the boat in that last year I came up with an idea for a spirit box that instead of going just backwards and forwards, like sequentially, that it could go random. And then I noticed that recently somebody has just released that, and I was like, damn it. Like, because I have the prototype one that I made, I literally just bought a radio from Amazon and gutted it out and added my own, bits. I don't even know if it still works. It does. So I added my own bits into it to bring it to life, and I was testing it up at the asylum, but I'd had what now is an easy fix problem with the encoder being able to get it to select between the different modes. I could do this in no time now, but I've kind of missed the boat on being the first one to do that. So yes, definitely hanging on to some of these ideas. You just need to trust me when I say that there is stuff coming that is not done. And, my devices are built for, I guess, I don't want to falsify evidence, that's not what I'm here for. And so by using my own devices, I can trust in the results that I'm getting with more confidence than one that an app I've downloaded or one that someone else has made and want it to be really good so that it pushes numbers and sales. So I can tell you now, I don't sell a lot of devices. I'm not very well known, but I do put everything in my heart and soul and then some into what I do. I've been talking a lot, and I've got way much more.
Right.
I'll give you guys a chance to step in, and I've probably stirred some questions up. Or
Jay,
It's like, yeah.
go on, Jay.
He'll be well known after this.
Jeremy.
So, I've had a quick look through your catalogue, and there is lots and lots of stuff that I wish I could buy. What would you say would be, one of your most favourite to use, and had the most fun coding, using, making?
Probably, actually, the evolution of the Phantom meter was cool, but I just felt it was missing something. And this is going to sound, I don't know, as people, we're really conditioned, or we miss things sometimes that are right in front of us. Like, for example, you guys and anyone watching or listening to this have been watching or listening to me for the last, goodness knows how long. But I'm only just tuning that into your mind now. So you're only just paying attention to that, even though you've been doing it. I'm now making you think about it. It's the elephant in the room. A bit of a situation like that. When I was trying to sort of come up with a replacement for the ghost meter, I couldn't figure out how to do it. And then literally one morning I got up and I was like about to come in and sit down and have another go. And it just occurred to me, well, why don't you just look at what the thing does and just do that? As obvious as that sounds. And so I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes more sense. It usually comes on and it'll light up when energy is detected, and then it'll do this, and then it'll do that. And then I really stepped it up and just started to develop the Phantom meter version 2, which is it's a more sophisticated code, and it's also got the mode for like a K2 meter, like the sort of mode mapping, and like when it picks up the presence of EMF, the meter will move, and it also has the option to have sound, or you can turn the sound off. And this thing was the last device that I revised when I did a kind of update on everything at the start of the year and did all the version 2s. And it was meant to be a quick revision, but because of all the stuff I'd learned doing the planchette and the new Horus, it ended up being the most complex code that I have done, and I think it's over 2,000 lines of code. It actually is so much fun to take out. It is all or nothing, so you'll get nothing out of it, and then when it actually triggers, it's incredibly accurate and incredibly fun, depending on how you choose to interpret the readings that it gives you. I have a lot of fun with this device. I personally think it will be very popular if more people knew about it. That's me not being very good at marketing. I just bury myself in the computer all day and let things go out of stock in my store that need to be built. But I'm like, no, I've got to get this thing done. 3 days later, it'll be a couple of hours work. And so, yeah, this would be my most fun device. But it actually is the last one that I made. And what seems to be happening is every time I rewrite a code, I end up doing it better than anything else. Like I've used all of my experience to come up with something else. Because like at the moment, I'll just have to unplug it 'cause it's still plugged into the computer. I was doing it before we started talking. Um, I originally, it was like when I released the digital range at first, I came up with the Prox box, which is oh, trying to move away from Radio Shack circuits, and everybody does REM pods. I've decided I don't want to do REM pods anymore. So I was trying to use ultrasonics instead, and also to make it a bit more interesting, put a temperature sensor in there, so it's constantly monitoring temperature, and if anything gets in its proximity, it will respond. Now, it was working, but I felt at the time, even when I did it, that it was very clunky. And I sold two to people that I know. They were the only two that I sold. And I said to them, it's kind of still not exactly what I want. It works, but I feel like it could work better, but I don't know how to do that right now. But I will come back to it. And when I do, I purposely left the port open so that I can actually put a newer version of the code in there. Now, I think Sunday, I sat down and started to fix the code up for it. So, five days ago or something. And I thought, I've got this now. It's only going to take me a day. And what is it now? Thursday night, and I'm still trying to get it going. And that's why the Horus isn't back in stock yet, because I haven't stopped to build one. And this now is really a very complicated code in that I'm still trying to debug it. I'm so close to getting it to do what I want it to do, and it's just basically making it more efficient and more accurate. So trying to figure out how often do I want to update the sample? How do I want to hold on to like maybe do I want to hold on to a sample taken then and then maybe another sample and have them at 2 trigger points on like different times, or I don't know, my mind just starts spinning, and I'm trying to think, how can I add more to it to make it more authentic and more accurate. And so yeah, my plan is to get this code done, and then I'm going to do a prox box because this isn't available for purchase anymore. I discontinued it because I wasn't happy with it, and I didn't want somebody that I didn't know to buy it. Because I wasn't 100% happy with it. So like I said, the two people that bought it, I said to them before they bought it, I said, it's going to be revised. It is working, but it's going to work better. I will fix it up for you when I've redone the code. And while I've been doing it, I've had these ideas of how to make the version 2, which will be available for sale. And basically, I'm going to just, I don't know, do I give the secret to what? Yeah, it's okay. We can do this one. I'm going to double the temperature sensors in it. So instead of just one temperature sensor, it's going to have one at each side of the device, and it will monitor both temperatures, and it will take a sample of both. And then if one changes, it will tell you which one has changed and by how much, and if the other one does, or if they both change. And then that way, I kind of think if you've got something sort of manipulating over one side of it, you can see that there's a big difference in temperature, even just between the width of the device. And I've started getting all these crazy ideas just from writing this code. I'm like, oh, it'd be helpful to have that. And this is how my mind works. I just, if someone says something, or it'd be cool if we had one of those, or like, I look at something and I think, oh, well, it's good, but it'd be better if it did this. And then I just, like I said, I don't set limitations now. I'm just like, okay, well, how do we do that? And yeah, so actually, the reason I've spent more days than I planned doing this is because it's the foundation of the newer version. So I will be able to use this code once it's working and grow on that to add in the extra bits and the extra functions. And yeah, so this unfortunately doesn't have the hardware fitted that the new one will. So I'm kind of limited by how far I can go with this one. But I've gone way beyond the point already of I need to make it better. I'm already happy that I've made it better. I just want to make it a little bit better before I release it out to the people that have it. And then I do actually have a couple of these in stock that I didn't sell because, as I said, I wasn't 100% happy with it. And thinking about that the last couple of days, I thought, well, I will actually boot the code in them, and they'll be a good device. I'll sell them like on sale. And then what you'll notice about me is I don't hang on to any of my old devices, except things that have been really, like, this was the first digital device I did. It's really iconic to me. But things like, if I come up with a new version of something, I usually get rid of the old one and then just have the new one always in my stock, because I want to demo my devices. If somebody sees them, I always want to have the latest one in my kit. And I'm not the sort of person to have something sat on a shelf doing nothing when somebody else that maybe couldn't afford the full price could buy a discounted one and be using it. And so I decided that I'm going to add a section into my store called like rat devices. And I'm still deciding exactly what the rat stands for, but I kind of pinched the name from a nickname that people give 3D printers that are kind of made out of different bits of different 3D printers, and they call them rat rigs. And I like that.
Like a rat rod.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they're going to be rat devices. And so there's going to be a category. Sometimes I do just put stuff on sale if it's just a normal device that's being discontinued. But if I do a rat piece, it's something that I've maybe built out of odds and ends and there's only one or two of. And it makes it limited, but they will also be discounted. And so, you'll have an opportunity to get a device cheaper that's really rare, and it'll still be covered by my same warranty and everything. But yeah, like that radio thing that I made, like if I end up not using it, I'll sell it as a rat piece and someone can use it. Someone might enjoy using it. So I don't know. I don't even remember what you asked me. I've just been talking on again for like.
All right. No.
No, I've
I'm
actually
sure Gary has some questions.
Yeah, I've actually been listening to some of your different devices and things like that. And do you ever take people's orders, or when people suggest things to you, what they would like, and then you go, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'll go from there." Have you ever done anything like? Because I've actually got a couple of ideas in my head right now.
Funnily enough, early on when I was still just doing like the circuit, like the hand-built component circuits, like soldering everything together and whatnot. Somebody approached me with an idea that I genuinely had already thought about, but I didn't shut them down and say, "Oh no, I already thought of that." I was just like, that's a cool idea. I didn't want to be mean. I thought it was really nice that they did approach me and give me a suggestion. And it was for, funnily enough, an Ouija board, but when you move your hand over it, it can light up different colors. So the idea is you put it down, and if something moves over it, it would light up the word or the letter. And I had thought about it, but I'd also thought about the fact of the hundreds of LEDs that it would take and how long it would take me to solder them all together. So funnily enough, I guess, that had always been in my mind. When I did the planchette, I was like, it's something a bit different that kind of was along the same lines. But I had somebody mentioned to me the other day, because I'm shocking at following anything online, and so when new devices come out, I'm usually the last one to hear about it, unless it's immediately at the top of the news feed when I open up the Phantom Phase Facebook or something. And that's how I found out about the random radio thing. That's probably the last to know. So someone had made a suggestion about a device they'd seen. I've got terrible memory. I can't remember what it was, but it was only a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, "Oh, this is a really cool device that so-and-so is making. You should look at making one of those." And I was like, "Yeah, thanks for your suggestion. It sounds like a really cool device, but actually, I'm thinking in my head, I've got all these things that I want to do that I know don't exist yet, and they're kind of at the top." And it also comes back to not really wanting people to come back at me again saying, "Oh, why don't you be more original?" So trying to stay original and unique. However, yes, I am always open to ideas. Like even when I did the library for Horus, when I did the library for my Horus device, I started just writing words down, and it took me like weeks to finish it. And I came up with words that I wanted in there based on my experiences and things. But then I also asked friends in the paranormal community anything that they think should be in there. And then for one very regular customer of mine, he had some quite personal stuff, like deceased family members and things like that he wanted to have in his device. And so I actually put the code aside and made him his own version of the code and added those extra words in. I don't typically do that, but for him I did. So yeah, I am always open to suggestion because, you know, the first suggestion I got took me leaps and bounds. It's a cool device. It's a shame you can't change the music to suit the history of the location. Voila, digital music box. And I know I was the first one to do it.
Yep. Okay, I've got one. The first one I'm going to throw at you, all right?
Yeah.
I know you've already... Yeah?
Is it a box about yay big?
No. The first one I'm going to throw at you is, think like a REM pod. You put it down in the middle of the room. It's got like 4 little lights on it, okay? Yep. Now, I'm going to take you back to an investigation that we did a long time ago. We actually mentioned it in a show we did not long ago. And what we did was the family involved, they had a shadow person, a big tall person in there, and it always moved between the front room and the back room. So what we did was we set up a whole load of K2s. We had about 10, 12 of them through the house. And when we started picking it up, you'd see it flash on this one, then it moved to the next one. You could actually track the path that this energy was taking. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something I know parts of it you could probably easily do, but other parts I'm not sure. Now, think REM pod, but think something flat that goes on the ground, but it's got LEDs all the way around it so that it's not just the 4 of them. Mm-hmm. And then when a spirit comes in, it picks up the energy. You can see it as it moves around. Okay.
Would you like to know the name of the device that's already on my shelf over there?
I'm not finished yet. But also in the middle of it, you'll have a screen for the words, and then another screen which lights up red or green for the yes or no. Combine all that into one. That's my first device. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be absolutely sensational.
It's called the Phantom Gesture, and it's in a couple of pieces up on the shelf. It's not finished yet, but yes, and it has the ability to... That was it when I said I wasn't going to do REM pods anymore. I thought, how can I change that? I'm using a slightly different sensor that is going to work pretty similar to a REM pod.
Yep.
But it's not infrared. I'm not going to give away what the sensor is.
No.
But it is proximity. However, it can track the direction of the proximity. And the top of the device is actually got kind of pixel grids on it that... So it can say words, and it was actually going to be like an arrow to show you which way the energy's gone. It was almost finished, and then the problem I had with it was when I actually fitted the sensor inside of the top of the device, the sensor lost its range. So I needed to redesign the top of it, and so it got put on a shelf. And
it's still there.
Yeah, it's kind of still there.
All right,
but yes. Directional REM pod. Adding words, yeah, cool. Didn't think of that. I only had arrows. How would you sort of have the word triggered? Like, how would the word be associated to them?
I'm thinking along the lines of, you see, you were talking about the Ovilus. Now, I've never owned an Ovilus, but I had its predecessor, which was the PX, which doesn't it doesn't have a screen on it, and the words, you know, some of the words you spend the next week trying to work out what they're saying, and you still don't get there. But
Stephen Hawking.
I think one of them said aerobics or something.
Hawking. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This round is. Yeah, it will be for a couple more yet. Yeah.
But I thought when the Ovilus came out with the screen, I thought, oh, that's the duck's nuts. But I never actually got around to actually getting one of those. Now, to me, if we could have something like, because, you know, you'd put something down in a big room, and if you can identify the direction in which the energy is coming from, and if you had some sort of I don't know whether it would be like an auditory kind of an alarm or a screech or something that would pick up as it gets closer, you can almost he's starting to smile, in 3 dimensions pick up roughly where it is in the room.
All right, hang on. I think you're going to be mirrored because the screen's mirrored, but I wonder if you're talking about this. Okay, so the device is just sitting there in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
And something decides to come closer to it. Which way it's coming from?
Nice.
And then that something that's just come up to the device, and you can see which direction it's come from, wants to speak to you. And it said, feel. might want to feel a device, you know. So yeah, like you've got your directional proximity, okay, and then magnet, and then what was that? Fun, it is. Yeah, is that what you mean?
Very close. Very close. Shut up, Jeremy. All right. All right.
No,
Number
I think
two.
it's great. Like it's brilliant because you're thinking outside the box. You're thinking, hey, I've got these wicked ideas, and then left of field, it's just smile. I'm like, look what I got for you.
I'm actually thinking, where am I going to get the money from now?
I've already started filling out a shopping cart while we've been talking.
There's that to pay in the store.
Anyway,
So,
device.
I'm looking at the Horus.
Oh, shit. Device number 2. Okay. Now, I don't know about everybody else, but I can speak for Jeremy and I can speak for Jay in that one of our favourite devices is one of the oldest you will ever see, and that is the old rods, the divining rods.
Yeah, they don't have a power switch and no batteries. I struggle with them.
No. But what about, again, mixing devices? A digital version where you could get it to cross for a yes or separate from the note, and then directional LEDs or, just like the little bar things, if you want it to pick a direction for you, but also have see, now you've set me off, the yes, no, and the little voice box in there, or the little screen with the words.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. I guess.
In all honesty, it's probably not that different.
Devices are measuring. They're slightly different to your typical devices in that they are measuring geomagnetic field, which is the same as what a dowsing rod would be working from, and not a mobile phone. That, I guess, therefore, when those devices that I have that are using that sensor are triggered, they are kind of picking up that same energy. So the phantom meter is, I guess, a digital dowsing rod. Maybe that's where a digital dowsing got his name from, doing exactly that.
Oh, Billy boy.
I don't think he's using the geo sensors, but I'm not sure.
Because if you go back to one of our previous shows, we at the end of each season we do like a little mini movie kind of thing, and if you flick through our channel, you'll see there's one that we did at Smirk's Cottage, which is a place not too far from here, and we were using the dowsing rods in there, and we were getting a lot of activity, but at the same time as that, I think we had 2 or 3 K2s going, we had a millimeter going, and a few other devices, and we were getting. Now I know all the K2s are running off the same sort of sensor and things like that, but the millimeter I think is a little bit different.
Which one?
The millimeter.
It's still an RF pickup, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, they were all individually picking up and verifying quite a lot of what was happening on the dowsing rods, and I just thought, there's so many people coming up with so many different devices, but sometimes why not lump their favourite ones together?
Up for a cool contribution towards dowsing rods. I've got a good friend of mine. She makes some amazing dowsing rods, and the really cool thing about what she does, other than put a lot of work and effort into them, is that all of the money she makes from them, she donates to charity.
Oh, wow.
And I came up with this idea for some tips for the rods. To use glow filament that I've got, like a glow-in-the-dark 3D print filament. And so I supply her now with tips for her dowsing rods that glow in the dark. So I guess that's my contribution to dowsing rods. But dowsing rods are amazing. There's no question that they work. Water divining and all of the amazing stuff you can do with them. They genuinely do pick stuff up.
Oh,
so
they work.
Yeah, they're old school. I mean, it's
everything.
Look, I've been sitting in my own backyard of my house, and I've had a mate that's come around. He's like, I don't know about these things. They do this and do that, and for water and electricity, whatever. And it was, I'm going to sound crazy now. We're all crazy.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine that had passed away, and I said to my friend, watch this. Can you make it follow my dog in the backyard? Now, my dog was doing laps of the backyard, and wherever the dog went, those rods pointed to.
That's cool.
I'm absolutely upset that I didn't get it on footage, but I can make it happen again.
The lived experience. It's great. I do a lot of work for Go Series. As in, it takes a lot of my time. There is literally just me and Steve can barely operate a mobile phone, thus leaving me responsible for a lot of.
Hey, we got Jay.
Yeah, that's you, is it? Right. Okay, you're that guy. We all need one. But sometimes, it's a lot to take on. And so when we are filming for, like, doing an investigation where we're filming something for Ghost series, I kind of lose touch a little bit with being in that moment and just enjoying it, which is why I make a point of well, I don't know, it's not making a point. I really enjoy the opportunity of when I come up with a new device, and I guess it's part motivation to come up with a new one, to have an excuse to go up to Aradale and float around up there. When I'm not doing a tour, I just float around and I just test out my devices. Sometimes I calibrate the sensors to Aradale's environment, so that, like, I use the environment energy and levels to help me calibrate my devices for optimum use, in my opinion and mind. A lot of the data values that I get are different there than they are in my noisy workshop full of electronics and all this stuff. And I just really enjoy disconnecting and being in that moment. And yeah, definitely when I do it, I take minimal cameras. So if anybody goes over to either to my YouTube or goes to my online store / website, there is a link to the latest range of devices being demoed at YouTube, and you'll see that the production quality, as opposed to my Ghost series, is much lower, and there's only a little bit of footage because I'm literally get up there, capture a bit. As soon as I think I've got enough, which probably isn't, I put my cameras away and I just enjoy being there and not having to worry about it and being in that moment. And yeah, I think we could probably all say about some amazing experiences that we've had where there's just not been a camera. I think sometimes we want there to be a camera so that we can convince others, but we need to remember that we're really there just to experience it ourselves as well. It's great to be able to share it, but I do always say to Steve, the better the evidence that we capture, the less people are going to believe it.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I've got another one. I've just had another idea. Right now, this is very gimmicky, and it's probably easy to make. But a few years ago, we put on a bit of a Christmas ghost hunt, just for some of our regulars and what have you, and we went up to this tunnel. But as part of the gimmicky kind of thing, I'm friends with the official Western Australia Ghost Hunters team, Ghostbusters team. So they came out with the jumpsuits, the proton packs, all of that, and they were the duck's nuts. But my mate Toby came out with the EMF meter that you see in the films where they push the button and the two things come up?
Yeah. I've got a little one of those, yeah, a little replica. Yeah.
Well, he had the full-size one, and he pushed the button and it came up, and the photo's on our WAPA page somewhere. Yeah. But if somebody came up with an actual working EMF that did that, I shit you not, you would go Ghostbusters quite literally.
I did think about doing it. I'm a little bit excited. I'm going to move just about 5% off the topic in looking at the box that I've got down on the floor that I'm not allowed to open until my birthday. And in there is a limited edition made up like a Hollywood studio collectible piece of the proper Ghostbuster foot pedal and trap and everything, and it's all super cool. And I can't open it, and I'm just thinking about that now. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, I could put something in it and make it so that I can at least take it to the asylum and like roll out the ghost trap and have it light up and do something. But yeah, those iconic pieces, I couldn't think of anything more fitting to put on display in the Phantom Phase workshop than the original Ghostbusters, like, the trap piece that they've got there and the foot switch and everything. It's just amazing. Yeah, I'm so excited to open that up.
See, that EMF, I don't know if it'd be that hard really, because when you look at a K2, it's got the LED, so you're halfway there. It's the pincer movements.
I've got a little mini one that lights up. Yeah, I did look at it and I thought, it'd be pretty cool. And there is actually a free to access 3D print file that somebody has created, a model of it. It'll be pretty tricky to print, but I wouldn't have to design it. I could just print it, and it is a working one. Like it's not a ghost hunting device, but the things do move and but you could always rig it that when it picks up a signal, it then starts doing it.
I was going to say, if you set it up like a K2 kind of thing where it picks up and it rises up and lights up, you've got one guaranteed sale right here, I can tell you that.
But then I'm sort of getting in the territory of copyright and I don't know if I get I like to say there's a lot of stuff that I want to do. kind of really for myself, but
Legal
I am
boundaries.
so
Well, you could
busy,
change it a
like,
little bit.
it's why I won't take pre-orders or anything like that. I don't handle well when somebody has an expectation of me. Again, I really struggle with that. So I've got a rule now. I changed my setup and policy that if it's not in stock, it's not for sale. And I had somebody contact me the other day after an Orpic version of the Horus and the Planchette, because they were sold out. I sold them all at the expo. And I was like, look, I don't do pre-sales anymore. They're like, look, we're happy to pay you, and just whenever you get it done. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. However, um, I'll see about getting them built, and I'll accidentally list them here in this message first instead of up into the store. And if you do want them, then great. If not, I will just put them in the store. And I got that done, and I think it took me about 10 days, and I was like, hoping that even when I'd said and committed to doing it that way, I was still felt really pressured and was like, oh, I better get it done. I better get it done. And other stuff was getting in the way. And I'm like, so now I'm trying to stick with if it's not in stock, it's not for sale. So like the Horus that's saying out of stock at the moment, I've got plenty of stock to build it. And I've even got parts printed. But it's not assembled, and it takes time. And you know, that's the thing. These things take, you know, they're not quick. They're not easy to put together. Like every one, it has its little quirk. You know, it'll be slightly different to the other, and you know, it's so yeah. If you see something's out of stock, it is worth if you're wanting it and it's out of stock, it's worth sending me a message, and that will do two things. It'll either tell you whether I plan on putting it back in stock anytime soon, and if I was going to, then it also reminds me that I actually need to get that done. So, you know, even from our conversation tonight and a message I got from somebody yesterday, yes, I do need to put some of those Horuses back in stock if I want to stay in some sort of business, which I'm really not in. There's been no profit yet.
Well,
It's love.
we are
Yeah.
just about out of time.
Yeah.
We're
I'll do
down to a couple of minutes. So, any
No.
closing comments from anybody?
Now you've got I think it's a Horus that you're looking at, and you got the Horus. What was it? I forgot what I was saying.
Transmuter?
You had the let me find it again. Sorry.
The Orpic ones?
Yes, you had the Orpics, and then you had the Horus plus whatever.
V2.
The V2. Yeah. So what's the difference with those? With the go with that? Is that just the casing, or is it
The
the
difference
tech
between the two devices, or
Yeah.
or Orpic and normal?
both?
Right. Okay. We'll start with Orpic. This is just a normal Phantom meter. The V2 is because it's the version 2. It's that's the predecessor version 1. So every time instead of having to come up with a new name for the device, I'll just do the later versions. Where other people do that. It's just easier. So the standard, my default colors now, I used to do all kinds of colors, meant stocking a lot of different filaments. And yeah, it's kind of too much. So it's sort of defaulted to black and white is now my kind of iconic color. That's a stock color. I decided I've still got quite a lot of different colors left over. And also it's fun sometimes to build something a little bit different. So I've decided to come up with something called the Orpic range. And the Orpic is like, by definition, I can't remember word for word, it is on the website. If you click on Orpic, it actually does tell you what the definition of the word is. But in summary, it was very fitting because not only is it a cool word, but it's also it's something a bit unusual, a bit quirky, a kind of unique piece. And for a lot of people that have supported me so much along the years, a lot of returning customers have really pushed me to keep going and keep developing because, as I said, every time I build something new, I come up with something else. So every single build I do, I get an idea of how to make it better next time. And so they maybe one day it'll be like digital dowsing where you'll pay $1 billion for an Ovilus 3 or whatever it is at this point. If I get somewhere substantial with this business and my devices become worth more money, then it's kind of a gift back to the people that buy from me and collect from me a limited edition piece. I don't make any money out of doing it, because flat rate, every Orpic will only be $20 more than the standard one. And that means me writing a different version of the code. I have to alter that code each time it's done, because it'll actually display that it's an Orpic in there. And at some point, I plan on some of the Orpic editions having an extra feature or function. And it'll always only ever be $20 more, but there'll be limited pieces. So there will not be two the same color. They'll not be two the same. They will be completely unique. So that's the definition of the Orpic. That's the purpose of it. The Phantom Meter is, like the Ghost Meter Pro, is a device that interprets geomagnetic energy and can alert you to the presence of the energy. Once it's picked up on the presence, if that level that's gone up shifts again by a dependent amount, it will return a yes or a no response. So, as we know, manipulation of energy is believed to be a means in which spirits try to communicate with us. My devices are designed to measure said energy and demodulate the energy back into a form that we can understand. So the Horus is basically, it's very inspired by the Ovilus, an absolutely masterpiece. Bill Chappell is an absolute genius. I would love to have a conversation with him one day, and just, I wouldn't be here if he hadn't done what he'd done. The ideas that have grown from what he's done. It is a dictionary of, or I refer to it as library, tried to be a bit different. It's a library of words. And again, it's measuring geomagnetic energy. If that geomagnetic energy is manipulated, then it will select a word from its dictionary and present it and speak it in Stephen Hawking's voice. Rest in peace. Yes, the other feature that we saw before on this is the two proximity sensors in the top that are independent, and so it can detect proximity on either sensor or both at the same time. If it's gone off and you've missed it and you come back to it, it will show you on the screen which one it was, or whether it was both that triggered. So yeah, they are two different devices. I know we're running out of time.
Yep, we do have to go. We've gone 3 minutes
if I
over.
I'll just show you this. It's my iconic piece. It's slightly different to the original music box. It was a lot squarer and a lot more sort of rough. Printing skills weren't as good. So the trumpet stows on top, which is great, so they don't get snapped off. This is the Phantom Music Box. Okay, when it's triggered, it'll play some creepy music that I came up with, right? Altered these tracks. They're royalty free, despite what anyone on Facebook says. I have the rights to them. Okay. The thing was, when I started and when I first did it, like that coffin-shaped music box, I did use an infrared sensor as seen in my Phantom Note, which is the infrared music box. Okay. IR sensor, for those that don't know, has a field of view of about 180 degrees and will trigger if something moves within that range. And again, this will then trigger and play some creepy music. When I came up with the original music box, I started to see other people try to copy it, which is fine. Everybody borrows and shares. I have no problem with that whatsoever. However, I wanted to stay a step ahead. So I changed the sensor, and as you will see, there is no visible sensor in this thing, and it can see almost it's about 280 or 300 degrees, I can't remember exactly now, field of view around the device. Okay, its blind spot is right behind it, otherwise it can see you, and the sensor in it is so sensitive and powerful to motion and also change in temperature. It can see through up to 5 centimeters of solidity. So even if somebody moves in the next room, it will also trigger. That is very cool.
Anyway, we do have to go. We are well and truly out of time. So take it easy, guys.
I think we have to get you back on the show, that's for sure.
Oh, yes, we'll definitely have you back, yes. But we have to go. We are now 5 minutes over. get in trouble for
My
that.
bad.
No, it's all your fault.
Yep.
All right, catch you guys.
Yep.
Cheers.
Yeah.